Good morning.
Okay, good morning. It's nice to see you faces. At this time, we will bow our heads in prayer. Send thy peace, O Lord, which is perfect and everlasting, that our souls may radiate peace, that we may think, act, and speak harmoniously, that we may be contented and thankful for thy bountiful gifts, that amidst our world strife we may enjoy thy bliss, that we may endure all, tolerate all, in the thought of thy grace and mercy, that our lives may become a divine vision, and in thy light all darkness may vanish, that we, thy children on earth, may all unite in one family. And so it is. Okay, I chose for my topic this morning, Blessed are the meek.
You go to church.
I was doing some study. Stay there. Just a minute.
You go to
Technical
church.
issues. I was doing some study and I came across the Sermon on the Mount, and I came to realize that maybe how we view some of the language in the Sermon on the Mount is not exactly what the original Bible or the original teachings of Moses and Jesus meant. So I did some background. Now, our definition in the Standard Webster Dictionary is quiet, gentle, easily imposed on, non-resistant, or submissive. That's the definition of meek. And many of you this week have been quiet, gentle, easily imposed on, non-resistant, or submissive. Okay, big show of hands. First, I'm going to go into some of the background of the word. In the original testaments found in the Torah, they were written in Aramaic, but the original ones that found their way into the Torah, which is the Jewish Bible or guidelines, we find three basic words regarding meek. Anavi, A-N-A-V, pronounced Anavi, is the Jewish term that should be in most of these phrases, or even in the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, for meek. A navi is a condition of a person's heart that shows one's actions. That's a far cry from gentle and easily manipulated. Okay. Even though meek is used throughout the Bible, there's no real English word that can correspond to what was meant when it was written originally. We don't have a word that encompasses, we'd have to have 20 words to encompass everything that meek, or this condition of meekness, actually meant. There are 6 words that the translators used. These are afflicted, poor, low, bowed down, subdued, and crushed. That's not really even our attitude with our new definition, our English definition. When you hear poor, you think of money and material possessions. If you hear afflicted, you think of illness. Blessed are the meek. What were they really trying to tell us? The Hebrew word anavi was in the original text. Remember, it means a condition of a person's heart. The actions reference means is that of following without resistance, which is a big unity principle, to let spirit flow. We had our wonderful daily word which said the same thing. It's the spirit of non-resistance. These followers are called anavim. That's the people that have the anave. They have a name. They're people that let spirit flow and have no resistance to God's word and go about their calling. It brings to mind Mother Teresa. I was just reading a really great book that she actually wrote. And Mother Teresa is the epitome of an Ave. You know, she was a little bitty woman. She was a nun within a convent. And she was called upon to go out and serve the poor. She felt that was what she should do. So this little bitty, meek woman went to the Pope, got approval to start a whole new order. First to leave the order she was in, start a whole new order And I think most of you know about the rest of her life. Right now there's over 240 homes that she had built, that her order maintains for people with mental illness, addictions, disease, all kind of situations. The world over knows of Mother Teresa's meekness, but she was far from meek. She just went about, and this is the action part. You didn't even have to talk to her. She didn't have to say words to you about anything she did. She went about doing her calling, letting God's words flow through her as to what her next step should be. So there were no words. She was meek in the Anave, and she was an Anave person. Okay, we first encounter the word Anave, not in our standard Bible, but in the original Bible teachings, in Numbers 12, 1 through 8. And I'm going to read the whole thing to give you the history. Okay, Numbers is in the Old Testament. A lot of us, there's a lot to learn from the Old Testament, even though you think it's just about laws. There is some stuff stuck in there that might be interesting to read, especially about Moses and Moses' life, or some of the other saints from the Old Testament. Okay, Numbers 12, 1 through 8. And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. And they said, Hath the Lord indeed spoken only to Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very meek, which in the original text it says the man Moses was very Anave, or the man Moses was Anave. You can't be very meek. You're either meek or not meek. You can't be very meek or almost meek or kind of meek or sort of meek. You're either meek or you're not meek. So very meek was not a good way to say this. Above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. So he was the meekest of the meek. So he had it down. And the Lord spake suddenly unto Moses and unto Aaron and unto Miriam, Come out, ye three, into the tabernacle of the congregation, and the three came out. Now this was a serious problem. If Miriam and Aaron had to go to God to settle this, there were some issues. I would hate for God to call me and somebody I was arguing with him out and talk to me face to face. That would be rough. So you have to think about, this is what's happening here. And it says, And the Lord came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. Okay, this is God speaking face to face, and it doesn't really say what form, but in a form to these people. And he said, Hear now my words. If there were a prophet among you, I the Lord will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. And he goes on to say, My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. So he was only going to appear and talk face to face to Moses from then on. And not in dark speeches, and the similitude of the Lord shall be beheld. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses. Now I want to, at this point, like I said, Moses was the meekest of the meek, so we need to study more about Moses. In verse 6 it says, And he said, Hear now my words, if there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision. So at that point, he has pulled away from face to face with all these people except for Moses. So that was the first time it was mentioned. Moses was the meekest of the meek. So be very meek this week. Okay, in Isaiah 11:4, and there's probably 80 verses in the Old Testament, and probably another 120 where meek is used. But it's used differently, a different word every time. Okay, Isaiah 11:4, But with righteousness shall he judge the poor and decide rightly for the meek. In the original Bible, it's called the Anavim, the meek, the people that are meek, the listeners, the followers. These are the meek. Psalm 9:12, he will not forget the cry of the afflicted, is in the English Bibles. He will not forget the cry of the Anavim. So it makes a whole different context as to what they're trying to tell us. In another place in Psalms it says, the meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will teach his way. So he's going to guide us in judgment and teach our way. Again, the word should be the Anavim, the followers, the people of non-resistance, is letting Spirit flow. And then in Psalms 37:11, before we get into the New Testament and the Sermon on the Mount, it says, but the meek, the Anavim in the original, shall inherit the earth. So that was already established before it was said on the Sermon on the Mount. So it must be a big point if it keeps coming up. And then of course Jesus brought it to the people. In most of these verses, sometimes in the Old Bible, Anavah was used. Anavah, A-N-A-V-A-H, was the Hebrew word for action. You are a nave, you're meek, and then your actions are the anavah. So sometimes the actions are spoken of in the original text, because we have to act meek, or we have to show a meekness in this sense, a non-resistance. Okay, Anavim again are the followers. In Deuteronomy 18:18, it says, I shall rise up a prophet to them from among the brothers, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them. This follows, you'll get the connection in a minute. This is the first reference to Jesus coming in the Bible. It's Deuteronomy 18:18. I shall rise up a prophet to them from among their brothers. And in the original it says, I shall rise up a prophet to the Anavim from among the Anavim. So from among the meek, he's raising up someone who is meek. In Deuteronomy 34:10, it further describes this, saying that he will be like unto Moses. He'll be the meekest of the meek. Okay, when Jesus came and spoke in the synagogue, it's in Luke 4:16, and he spoke to the people. In a Jewish synagogue, they read the Torah in a series. That's their main teaching. They don't really preach or talk. They read the Torah. And if you've ever been to a Jewish church or to a bar mitzvah, you see this huge scroll is unrolled, and they would read a certain part each day. In Jesus' time, they read in a 3-year cycle. And I'm going to read you. When Jesus went to the synagogue, it was predestined and pre-planned because of what he wrote, what he read. He knew what would be read that day by the cycle, and he chose that day to enter. So Isaiah 61, 1 through 2 is what Jesus read. It says, the Spirit of the Anave, God is upon me. He says Anavi in the original text. Ours just says the Spirit of the Lord God. Because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. So he was preaching to the people that were non-resistant, the people that were letting Spirit flow. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God. Okay, in the text that where records are kept, the Jewish people have records back to wherever, and in those records it says that Jesus read those verses, and when it got to the part to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, before he said vengeance of our God, he closed the scroll and stopped. He didn't read that any farther, which I think is really interesting. That's a whole lot more study. So Jesus was saying he had come here to be a prophet to the meek, to the Anavim, which is luckily can be some of us. And when he says, then we get to the Sermon on the Mount, and says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the Anabim, for they shall inherit the earth." The people with this open heart, Christ consciousness, and non-resistance to following the Spirit, or following our source. Those are the people that will inherit the earth. These were people that are not ego-driven, but Spirit-led. When looking at these verses, and through unity or through new thought, we go to probably a metaphysical or a more energetic rather than just physical word meanings. And we find that the Sermon on the Mount, each verse represents a chakra or an energy point within our body. The 7 churches was about the 7 chakra points. The 7 parables were each about a chakra or an energy point. The Sermon on the Mount, those verses are about a chakra or an energy point. So through unity teachings, we understand that it's more about spirit and source than literal words for that connection. Okay, the first chakra, poor in spirit, represents our physical form. The second one, they that mourn, represents the second chakra. And number 3, the one we're talking about, the meek or the Anavim, inheriting the earth, represents the third chakra. And that third energy point it's the seat of our personal power and our ego. Unfortunately, ego is a big thing with us. In the book, Jesus of the Essenes, and I can't remember who wrote it, I'll have to look it up, the author goes through all these in a much deeper point as to what does this mean spiritually and energetically to us in our lives. In Buddhism, the enlightenment is the state of anave. When you reach anave, you have reached enlightenment. When you have non-attachment, when you are not driven by your ego, when you're spiritually listening with your spirit rather than your mind, then that's the state of enlightenment. So it's the same thing. The word corresponds to anave, the Buddhist word for enlightenment. In Hinduism, the Vedanta verses convey the same meanings. They have a list of the same things as the Sermon on the Mount, a list of verses that correspond to the same words as the Sermon on the Mount, just in a little different language. In this dog-eat-dog world we live in, meek is something we just don't grasp. Someone tells you you're meek, you might actually get mad about it, because it's like, no, I'm not meek. I get my way. I know that. I get my way. So it's just real hard to face world as meek if we understand meek as the way the world now has it in the dictionary. We need to take things to our heart and be led with our heart to be meek. It means being non-resistant, letting spirit flow. All these things are hard. It means watching your speech, letting our speech reflect the actions of the anave. Sometimes my speech is not real meek, especially if I'm having a bad day. Next week is into the month at the company I work for, so I'll have a lot of unmeek moments. I promise you, I'll have to pray a lot. If you show self-restraint, you don't have road rage. You get a bad email, you don't jump on it and go email something ugly back. That's real hard not to do sometimes. You don't make a phone call to prove your point, because our points don't really matter. Everybody's right. If someone confronts you and you say, yes, you're right, well, usually the argument stops, because it usually leaves them hanging with their mouth open, like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to fight with you. You're right. I'm right and you're right. We're all right. So there's no conflict. You're right. So next time that happens to you, just say, oh, yeah, you're right. I get it. You're right. And that'll stop it. Okay, you have to have humility. We're such a success-driven world. It's like, no, I thought of that idea first. No, she can't do that as well as I can. It's all this about me and my success and my ego, and I'm this person, and I've got a name on my desk and on my door. Not a lot of humility. We can't find peace, or true peace, unless we're following some of these Anave or being Meek teachings. Okay, Rumi, I think most of you are familiar with Rumi and their poetry. Rumi actually has 7 steps to finding your source, which again, 7 steps, 7 main energy points that kind of follow the Sermon on the Mount. Again, number 1, remove anger. You know, sometimes it's hard to get through a whole day without being angry about something. I think nowadays conflict and anger seems like that's normal. If you're not having a conflict and you're not angry and you're having a good day, something's wrong with you. You know, you get looked at funny. Number 2 is forgiveness, which is part of the Anave way. It's hard to be meek if you're not forgiving. Relax and speak no ill of anyone is the way it says. So I guess that means take a deep breath before you start talking. It says relax and speak no ill of anyone. If we never offer an opinion, then we can just, like I said, have no conflict, which is what we're supposed to do. Humility is number 4. Compassion is number 5. Contentment. You know, my grandmother used to say, you're not going to get anything better until you're happy with what you've got. And there's a lot of truth to that. Sometimes we're not contented. We're confronted all day long with, you got to have more. You got to have the big red car. You've had your car a year. You got to have a new car. You need a bigger house. You need better clothes. You need this. And so it's hard to be content sometimes. But we should be content. And then generosity, a generous spirit, so that you're giving and loving and kind to people and animals and the planet, to everything that needs it. Okay, let's go to our meditation now, and let's develop a connection to some of the source energy and a meekness of spirit. So if you'll relax, start taking some deep breaths, and settle into your chair. Take another deep breath. Relax. Relax your neck. Relax your shoulders. Relax your arms. Relax your knees. Relax your feet. Take a deep breath. Feel the energy of the room. Feel the energy of the people sitting close to you. Feel the energy as it circles around you. Take a real deep breath and relax even further. Feel a beam of light as it enters through the ceiling, comes down into your head, fills your head with energy, and searches your body for any places of tension. As you feel this energy searching your body, continue to breathe deeply. Feel where the energy stops. And imagine the energy changing to a color. Whatever color your energy is, that's okay. But feel it stop at a point of resistance somewhere within your body, and it could be anywhere. Feel the energy wrap around that tension point, that place of fear, place of a feeling of lack or abandonment, an illness, or a place of pain that has happened. Feel that energy wrap around that area, spinning faster and faster, getting warmer and warmer, until all of a sudden it bursts into bubbles. Feel the energy of the bubbles carry this tension point out through your body and up into the heavens. Again, envision energy as it comes into your head, whatever color or rainbow colors, and goes down through your body to see if everything is flowing. It should flow through your body, into your legs, into your feet, with no resistance. It should flow into the ground and form roots of light and warmth into the earth to establish you being grounded and a place for energy to flow. Now that you've established the energy of non-resistance, feel an aura that comes through your skin, through your body, out to circle your body, to leave you protected with an open heart and an open mind for healing. Feel this energy circle you and spiral up through the ceiling, leaving your aura of protection with the light from Source. Rest in the moment of feeling non-resistance. Take several deep breaths. And when you're ready, come back into the building. Open your eyes and wiggle a little bit. There we go. So my message to you are two things to do. If you have an opportunity, study the life of Moses and exactly what he was about. A lot of us review Moses by Charlton Heston in the movie, and that's not quite it. And look for spiritual things that Moses did, because he was meek, he was without resistance, he was a Nave, and he was speaking to the Anavim, or the people of no resistance, the meek, the meekest of the meek.